been drawn to the Lord's calendar. I don't know why, just always been drawn to it. I always found the calendar, the Gregorian calendar, to be empty, unfulfilling, and confusing, quite frankly, because I didn't understand why God would be like, celebrate Christmas. And I was like, you're not in here, you know? And so that's honestly the reasons what started it. And I remember having questions about the Sabbath and wanting to kind of embark on this journey of understanding like why we worship on Sundays. And I got a couple of answers, but nothing was really satisfying. And so I got overwhelmed when I first started the study, and I was like, I'm going to get back into this thing. And man, my heart is so heavy. Okay. So as I started the study, it's a great time because we are literally in the middle of the Feast of Dedication, which, come to find out in my study, I realized is actually not a holy time that God set apart. It is something that the Jews set apart, but we're going to talk about that. But as I started my study, I just thought that this was one of the convocations, the holy convocations that were set apart in Leviticus 23, where God says his holy convocations are, one being the Sabbath in Leviticus 23:3, the Passover in Leviticus 23:4-8, the Feast of First Fruits in Leviticus 23:9-14, the Feast of Weeks in Leviticus 23:15, the Feast of Trumpets, Leviticus 23:23, the Day of Atonement, Leviticus 23:26, and the Feast of Tabernacles, Leviticus 23:23. And so as I was fully expecting, right, I'm like, I don't know, to see Feast of Dedications. And I was like, where is that, right? Because it's coming up. And that is what initiated what I want to talk about right now. So excuse me if I stumble a little bit. I'm literally in the middle of this, and I was just like, oh my gosh, I gotta talk about this. So getting into the Feast of Dedication, the Festival of Lights, is ultimately a story that happens in between the Old Testament and the New Testament. So it's intertestamental. It is an account. It's a historical account of the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem. And it begins, it's accounted for in the Maccabees. 1 Maccabees 4. Now I'm tired. In John 10:22, Jesus and the disciples honor the Feast of Dedication to honor the fight between Antiochus and the Maccabees. Was Antiochus's army, which he delegated to someone else to fight, and he wasn't successful. But the fight took place in between the Intertestament. So it was before Christ. The temple was defiled. And after the Jews defeated this army, they rededicated the temple back. But the reason why my heart is so heavy is because the Maccabees accounts for, you guys, years of persecution. I mean, the accounts of what they did. It's so heavy because we know that to this day, like, Christians and followers of Jesus Christ are still getting persecuted. But to read about the gruesomeness and how merciless they were, I don't even want to read the accounts of what was going on. It's something that you might find like nothing is new under the sun. That's what got me, is reading this like, oh wow, like this isn't new. What we're experiencing today is not new. And y'all, literally my chest, like I can feel it. It's just a cry. It's so heavy. And I think I definitely have to build a stronger foundation to even like share that, because right now I feel like, I need to go and pray because it's so heavy on me. And I wasn't expecting that, right? To read such gruesomeness and how strong they had to be, and to see how what one person the people that he could gather. So listen, I'm sorry, I'm keeping you suspense. I don't mean to. So essentially, Antiochus waged war against women, children, men, anybody who would proclaim to be in service and worship and praise of God of Abraham, right? And he ordained, or he created an ordinance for all over the land, right, everywhere, that they could not, like, Jews could not practice, and that everybody would kind of basically like be under the same rule, right? Everybody do this. Everybody would like honor and worship the same. And I want to see if I could like, okay. And it says the king wrote to his whole kingdom that all should be one people, and that each should give up his customs. All the Gentiles accepted the command of the king. Many, even from Israel, gladly adopted the religion. So it was this new religion where it was just like, no, we're going to become one. Sound familiar? They sacrificed to idols and profaned the Sabbath. And the king sent letters. My heart is so heavy. And the king sent letters by messengers to Jerusalem and the cities of Judah. He directed them to follow customs strange to the land, to forbid burnt offerings and sacrifices and drink offerings in the sanctuary, to profane Sabbaths and feasts, to defile the sanctuary and the priests, to build altars and sacred precincts and shrines for idols, to sacrifice swine and unclean animals. My heart is, oh my goodness. And to leave their sons uncircumcised. They were to make themselves abominable by everything unclean and profane, so that they should forget the law and change all the ordinances. And whoever does not obey the command of the king shall die. And that's exactly what they did. And he kept that promise. He killed women, children, babies, men, for years. 4 years. The atrocities that are accounted are crazy. And essentially, there was a family that was like, I'm done. So I just think they kept doing things like offering sacrifices, like vile sacrifices on their altars, just defiling things, and so killing people in the streets for real. And so Mattathias was seeing this and just was enraged, right? And he says, we will not obey the king's words by turning aside from our religion to the right hand or to the left. And this is Mattathias saying, because he's being told that he has to like follow or die. And he's like, nah, I'm not gonna do it. We're gonna die. So then a Jew came forward and was like, shoot, we gonna give these, these sacrifices to this false god, according to what the king had commanded, right? So basically he bent the knee to Baal. And when Mattathias saw it, that he did it, he got so mad that he killed the Jew. He killed him. And he killed all the officers, right? And he let out into like the community where he was at, like, who with me? Who was with me? And so this is what it says. This is in verse 27. It says, then Mattathias cried out in the city with a loud voice, saying, let everyone who is zealous for the law and supports the covenant come out with me. And he and his sons fled to the hills and left all that they had in the city. Can you imagine that? My heart. So the officers came after him. And long story short, I think I want to read this one. They kept killing people, right? People just had to stay strong in their faith. They kept killing people, babies, mothers, holy priest. They would just kill them all. They kept defiling temples, kept destroying customs. And it was supposed to be like this sign, right? Like, you see what happens when you follow this God will kill you. And the people took on this, I don't even know what to call it, but resilience, right? To say, okay, we gonna die, because we rather die free and honoring our customs according to God's commandments than to be defiled. That's what they did. And so Mattathias fought. I don't know how he died, like if it was natural or if it was in war. I mean, but the man fought, and what he did was, when he knew he was about to die, like, again, I don't know if it was necessarily in battle, but he began to give a charge to his sons. And there was one son that is what brings the story of the feast of dedication to like a head, right? And that is Judas, his son, who was called Maccabees, took command in his place. My heart, y'all. Let me tell you something. Judas was a bad man, yo. Like in the best way. You hear me? Just like his father, this man took charge and got thousands and thousands of people to rally behind him, just like his daddy. And not only did he do that, but he recalled the word of God back to God. Of like, hey, you did this with David. I need you to do this with me. Like, because I'm not having it, right? Oh, so look, Judas wreaked havoc on Antiochus' kingdom for like some time. Antiochus was paid off, okay? He paid off. And he kept hearing all these defeats, right? That Judas was like continuously defending. You know, he was continuously defending. He was just killing everybody. Anybody who would bend the knee to Baal, anybody who would practice this fake, false religion and give up their customs, dead, burnt, gone, right? Call yourself a Jew, dead. If you bend the knee, nah, you ain't one of mine. And so this is what Judas was doing. He was really defending people, okay? So then when Antiochus heard this, he says he was greatly angered and sent and gathered all the forces of the kingdom, a very strong army, and he opened his coffers and gave a year's pay to the forces. Basically put a hit out on these people and ordered them to be ready in a time of need. But listen, but this Antiochus was so he messed up. This is where he messed up, because all the war that he had waged for so many years, he was broke and he had to actually go and get some more money. Okay, so it's when he go and get some money. I hope I'm not recounting this wrong, y'all, but it was when he go and get some money. I want to say it's Persia. I want to say he went to Persia. He put somebody else in charge. It's not funny. He put somebody else in charge. I want to say it's Lysias. Okay, or Lysias, Lysias. And this is when Judas Maccabees, he shines, y'all. So Lysias has a great army, and he goes after Judas in the temple and the people. And this is when it says, I want to read this. Lysias was to send a force against them to wipe out and destroy the strength of Israel and the remnant of Jerusalem. And he was to banish the memory of them from the place. I want you to think about that, the memory of them. He was going to put aliens in their territory and and distribute their land. Sorry. This is crazy. Okay. So then it goes on that when Judas had heard this, he had got ready, right? So that when the people came, that they wouldn't be there. Like, so he wanted to get ready. And that's exactly what he did. They went, they fasted, they prayed to God, they armed themselves up, not just physically, but in the spirit as well. They recalled God's word back to them, and it says, gird yourselves and be valiant. Be ready early in the morning to fight with these Gentiles who have assembled against us to destroy us from our sanctuary. Because remember, like, their home was basically like a war zone. It was a war zone. Everything was destroyed. They could not, all of their customs, all of their traditions, their history just gone. And they were constantly in a state of defilement, these people, these aliens in their land, making them eat things that they couldn't eat, offerings on their altar, defiling the altar, defiling the temple, right? Destroyed the temple, killing people on every single side. I mean, it was bad. Okay. So it goes on to say that they have this, they're starting a war, and it says, do not fear their numbers or be afraid when they charge. Remember how our fathers were saved at the Red Sea when Pharaoh with his forces pursued them. Now let us cry to heaven to see whether he will favor us and remember his covenant with our fathers and crush this army before us today. The men of Judas, goes on, the men with Judas, I don't know why I can't read today, y'all, blew their trumpet and engaged in battle. The Gentiles were crushed and fled into the plain, and all those in the rear fell by the sword. Now, I want to say this too, because where is it at? There's a part here where Lysias has saw this, and when he saw how Judas Maccabees got the people riled up, he was shook. He was like, this is crazy. These men gonna die for him, right? Because I mean, like, can you imagine? I can't even imagine a comparison. It's just like, if you know you have this great army and you're like a militia, you know what I'm saying? And you going up against this great renowned army that has known to be, have crushed nations, and you saying you about to go up against them, but yet what Lysias saw was, I guess, like the crazy in these people's eyes. It was just like, he was like, oh snap, they for real. And it stirred up something. He was scared. It stirred up in him anger. He was like, and he had to retreat. So it said Judas met them with 10,000 men. Oh my goodness. And I wanted to read this. Yep. It says, and when Lysias saw the rout of his troops and observed the boldness which inspired those of Judas, and how ready they were to either to live or to die nobly, he departed to Antioch and enlisted mercenaries to invade Judea again with an even larger army, but got defeated. And this is the foundation of the rededication of the temple. Isn't that crazy? Isn't that crazy? So, okay, because we're not done. That's just the foundation of it, right? So then we see, it says in 1 Maccabees 4, this is where we're going to see if you want to just start there. And it says, then said Judas and his brothers, behold, our enemies are crushed. Let us go up to cleanse the sanctuary and dedicate it. It goes on. So the altar was profaned, the gates were burned. I just want to kind of set this picture to you of how bad the temple was. Okay. In the courts, they saw bushes sprung up, as in a thicket or as on one of the mountains. They saw chambers of the priests in ruins. And they were saddened by this, right? They were just like, man, like, I can't believe the temple just is so bad. And they even set up, because they had to like basically take it back over. And so they continue to even fight to like make sure they could secure the temple to get it cleaned again. And so they had to keep fighting against these mercenaries, which they did win. Okay. And that's what's so beautiful. And so it goes on, the entirety of chapter 4 is them recounting about how they were fighting these mercenaries, right? They had to fight this war. Then they had to fight these mercenaries to secure the temple. They finally secure the temple. They see the temple in like crazy ruins, okay, and how defiled it is. And it says, okay, after they see how bad it is, they secure it. It says, it goes on in verse 50. Then they burnt incense on the altar and lighted the lamps on the lampstand, and these gave light in the temple. They placed the bread on the table and hung up the curtains. Thus they finished all the work that they had undertaken. Early in the morning, goes on in 52. On the 25th day of the ninth month, which is the month of Chislev. I hope I'm saying that right. I'm sorry, y'all. In the 148th year, they rose and offered sacrifice as the law directs on the new altar and burnt offerings which they had built. And this was actually the day that it was initially defiled. So then you have a year later. I think it's a year later. Is it a year later? No, it's not. I don't think this is a year later. I think this is like years later. I wanna put a pin in that so I can go back and I'll correct that. But I think this is like years later. But it's like on the same day. So there's time had passed, but it's the same day that it was defiled. But now they're restoring it. And it says, at the very season, on the very day that the Gentiles had profaned it, it was dedicated with songs and harps and lutes and cymbals. And it says, so they celebrated the dedication of the altar for 8 days. And this is in verse 56. And offered burnt offerings with gladness and offered a sacrifice of deliverance and praise. They decorated the front of the temple with golden crowns and small shields. They restored the gates and the chambers for the priests and furnished them with doors. There was very great gladness among the people, and the reproach of the Gentiles was removed. Then Judas and his brothers and all the assembly of Israel determined that every year at the season, the days of the dedication of the altar should be observed with gladness and joy for 8 days, beginning with the 25th day of the month of Kislev? I'm not sure. Wow. Okay, so that is the story. Now, there's also, I want to see if I can find it. Yeah. Bear with me. So I got this, here it is, John 10. And it's John 10:22. Uh-oh. My phone's going to die. I'm definitely going to cut and splice this. Okay, so it says John 10:22. Am I tripping? Is it John 10:22? Okay. Then came Hanukkah in Jerusalem. It was winter, and Yeshua was walking around inside the temple area in Shlomo's colonnade. I'm saying that. So the Judeans surrounded him and said to him, "How much longer are you going to keep us in suspense? If you are the Messiah, tell us publicly." Yeshua answered him, "I have already told you, and you don't trust me. The works I do in my Father's name testify on my behalf, but the reason you don't trust is that you are not included among my sheep. My sheep listen to my voice. I recognize them. They follow me, and I give them eternal life. They will absolutely never be destroyed, and no one will snatch them from my hands. My Father who gave them to me is greater than all, and no one can snatch them from the Father's hand. I and the Father are one." That's the complete paragraph. But the point of that I'm reading now is to say that we see Yeshua, Jesus, in the temple during this time, substantiating the story, right, the history, and pulling it into the present time of the gospel, right? We see this connection, which we could then kind of presume that after that, the Jesus was honoring this time, right? Even though no, it's not a prescribed holy convocation, we see that Jesus did honor this historical part um, in the Jewish history, which is amazing. Okay, so that's that. So then, hold on. Okay, so there's a lot of places that the study can go at this point, but I think one of the things that I wanted to kind of lay as a foundation of what was the temple, what was the circumstances around the temple's destruction, and the temple's rededication into going into this festival. And I think the next place that I went, which is, I mean, we're already at 30 minutes, so I need to like cut it off. But I did want to understand the temple in itself. So just real quick. So in 1 Kings 6, no, there's another scripture. Yeah, I think it is 1 Kings 6. We see that there's a temple. Wait, if you okay, you know, this is I think Nathan talking to David. Oh, I'm not wrong. If I'm wrong, I'll do a correction. But I want to say okay, so I want to say it was Nathan talking to David, and David is saying, or is it Samuel? Now I want to go to it. Sorry, I need to go to it because it's going to mess me up. 2 Samuel 7. Okay, yeah, I wasn't wrong. Okay. After the king had been living in his palace a while, and Adonai had given him rest from all his surrounding enemies, the king said to Nathan the prophet, "Here I'm living in Cedar Wood Palace, but the ark of God is kept in a tent." Nathan said to the king, "Go do everything that is in your heart, for Adonai is with you." But the same night, the word of Adonai came to Nathan, "Go and tell my servant David that this is what Adonai says. You are going to build me a house to live in, ? Since the day I brought the people of Israel out of Egypt until today, I've never lived in a house. Rather, I traveled in a tent and a tabernacle everywhere I traveled. With all the people of Israel, did I ever speak a word to any of the tribes of Israel whom I ordered to shepherd my people Israel, asking, why haven't you built me a cedar wood house? Therefore say this to my servant David, that this is what Adonai says, I took you from sheep yards, from following the sheep, to make you chief over my people, over Israel. I have been with you wherever you went. I have destroyed all your enemies ahead of you. I am making your reputation great, like the reputations of the greatest people on earth. I will assign a place to my people Israel. I will plant them there so that they can live in their own place without being disturbed anymore. The wicked will no longer oppress them, as they did at the beginning, and as they did from the time I ordered judges to be over my people Israel. Instead, I will give you rest from all your enemies. Moreover, Adonai tells you that Adonai will make you a house. Where your days come to an end and you sleep with your ancestors, I will establish one of your descendants, which is Solomon, to succeed you, one of your own flesh and blood, and I will set up his rulership. He will build a house for my name, and I will establish his royal throne forever. And I will be a father for him, and he will be a son for me. So Solomon was his son, but this is also foreshadowing Jesus, because Jesus comes from David's bloodline. If he does something wrong, I will punish him with a rod and blows, just as everyone gets punished. Nevertheless, my grace will not leave him, as I took it away from Saul, whom I removed from before you. Thus your house and your kingdom will be made secure forever before you. Your throne will be set up forever. Nathan told David all of these words and described his entire vision. So we see in 2 Samuel 7:8-17, this is the Davidic covenant. When this is the first time we see about this temple being constructed, where David is just like, hold on, we got this golden ark and we put it in a tent, and we need to build this temple for God. Now, David builds something, but we do see the temple being constructed through Solomon. And I did write a note. Solomon's temple in Jerusalem, which is 1 Kings 6. Oh, how do I... Okay. 1 Kings 6. Oh, okay. And so chapter 6 outlines the house, the temple. Through 7. And essentially, we kind of go back to, which I think is like amazing, right? Oh my goodness. We see this amazing structure built. And even as amazing as it is, and how God is fulfilling this request from David, right? Nathan is like, yeah, go ahead, do it. God, if you want to do it, go ahead. God will do, God'll supply. And we see this plan initiated with David and fulfilled with Solomon, for it to be for it to later be destroyed, but then rededicated and rebuilt back up. So that's the part of the study I want to go into next, right? So we go from what is the Holy Convocation period, festivals, feasts. Why do we celebrate Hanukkah? Should we observe Hanukkah? My view is that if Jesus celebrated and observed it, then I think this is definitely something for us to know. Why? Even more so because this is a part of our culture as well too. This is our history as followers of Jesus Christ. If you are a Christian and you serve God, the God of Abraham, right? You are under persecution too, right? You're under attack too. Your customs are being called into questions. They want you to profane the Sabbath and profane the feast. And so I think it is important for us to know in remembrance and do these things in remembrance. And so, we see that, know that Hanukkah is not necessarily a holy convocation, but it is something that historically is a great time to remember the resilience of the Jewish community and people. I think that's so beautiful. And we see this, perseverance and uprising and strength in God. And we see the origins of the temple and why it was important. Where did it come from? Right? Why are they so set on defiling this place, right? And we haven't even gotten to like, but that's just the foundation of like David and Nathan, right? But God honoring that. And then it being this symbol to the people where God was going to rest. And here you have these rulers wanting to come against it because of the symbolism of it. Okay, that 41 minutes. Thank you for rolling with me. I'm going to cut this up and post it. And if you have rolled with me this long, the next study, I want to go into the actual temple because there's symbolism there as well with Jesus. And there's so much more to David and Solomon. And we still have the rest of the convocations, the holy convocations to get through. So thanks, guys. Until next time, I hope you got something from this. If there's any corrections that you saw that I'll need to fix and do, let me know. For any what is it called, like pronunciations. Yeah, I can do that. I can work on it. I'm gonna work on it. But first, I have to go to bed.